Hello and welcome again to Q&A, where I get to answer your baking questions. Today I'm going to be answering a question about how long you should cream your butter and sugar for. Now, this is a really common question and I get asked it a lot. And the short, simple answer is it actually is not about the time that you cream your butter and sugar for, but it's more about the transformation that the mixture goes through. Now, firstly, let me explain why you cream butter and sugar. And firstly, there's two main reasons. Firstly, it's to soften the butter even further so that when you start adding the remaining ingredients that they are introduced and incorporated really easily and can combine as one mixture easily. The second reason is to add lightness and air to your mixture, which obviously then helps to your bake rise when it's in the oven, but also adds lightness to the texture. So if you don't cream for long enough, if the recipe asks you to, then what will happen is that you quite often get a more dense, heavy texture in your bake than what was otherwise intended. Some recipes actually ask you just to beat your butter and sugar until it's just combined. So if it does that, then just do that. However, if a recipe asks you to beat your butter and sugar until it is pale in color, light in texture, and creamy in consistency, or a combination of those things, what you need to do is look for the transformation that mixture goes through from the start. And what you're looking for is it being beaten for long enough that it doesn't change consistency or color anymore. Now, obviously, the more you beat, the paler it gets, the lighter it gets, and the creamier it gets. So you need to keep an eye on it and just watch it, basically. Now, one thing that I recommend doing is actually, if you're not quite sure about how much it actually has changed and whether it's changing anymore, is to take little samples. I've just creamed a mixture here and I've taken a few little samples, and you can see right from the start it was very dense and dark in color, and as it moves around it gets paler, creamier and lighter in texture. And you can see these last two samples, they were taken about a minute apart from each other, and there is no change in consistency or color, which means that now it's to the point where you can stop creaming the butter and sugar and you can start introducing the other ingredients. Now, obviously, once you get to this stage that it's not changing, there is no need to beat it anymore. You can't incorporate any more air, and the consistency won't change that much unless it's a really hot day and the friction from the beating actually starts melting the butter. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is there are two actually things that will determine how long it takes you to get to this stage, and one is temperature. So the softer your butter, the warmer your kitchen, or the cooler your bowl, whatever, that will affect the time, but also the speed at which you beat. So obviously the faster you beat, the more quickly you'll reach that consistency that you're after. Now, it's a step that is really important that you don't rush. And as I said before, if you rush this step and you don't get to the consistency that you want or need, you will the bake that you're making, whether it be a cake or biscuits or a pudding, whatever you're making, will just be slightly denser. It won't rise as much when it's baking, and it'll have a heavier texture. So it's really important to spend that time with your creaming and get to the right point. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that often recipes say to a creamy consistency, which you can get to no matter what sort of sugar you're using. However, it is really sort of notable to remember that the type of sugar you're using and the size of the crystals, so obviously that's related, but also the proportion in which you're using the sugar in relation to the butter will also affect the creaminess of the mixture once you reach that stage. So the larger the crystals, the more sugar you use, the less creamy that mixture will be. So don't feel you have to just keep on beating until that sugar dissolves or it is, super creamy, because it may not ever get to that stage. And it's more about the mixture getting to that stage that it doesn't transform anymore. So next time you're creaming, remember it's actually not about the time that you're creaming and beating for, but it's about the transformation that your mixture goes through. That is more important. If you've got any other questions that you'd like to ask, just pop them in the comments box below and I will be sure to answer them in a future Q&A. Have a great weekend and I will catch you soon.